The transport ship was dying. It floated in the cold darkness of the belt, far from any planet or station that could help. The engines had stopped working 3 hours ago. The life support systems were failing. The temperature inside was dropping fast. Ambassador held her 3 children close to her body, trying to keep them warm. Her skin, which normally glowed with soft blue light, was now dim and flickering. This was a sign of fear among her people. Her children were shaking, their small bodies pressed against hers. They had been traveling to the Galactic Council Summit, a very important meeting of all the species in the known galaxy. They were a peaceful people, known for their wisdom and their beautiful glowing skin. They had no weapons on their ship. They had no reason to expect danger. But the pirates had found them anyway. The attack had been quick and brutal. 3 ships had surrounded them, forcing them to stop. The pirates had taken everything valuable. They had stolen the fuel cells that powered the ship. They had taken the emergency supplies. They had even taken the communication equipment that could send a distress signal. Then they had left, laughing as they flew away. Had tried everything. She had tried to fix the engines, but she was a diplomat, not an engineer. She had tried to send a signal using the backup systems, but the pirates had destroyed those too. She had tried to stay calm for her children, but as the hours passed and the cold grew worse, she had begun to lose hope. No one would find them out here. The belt was too far from the main shipping lanes. Even if someone detected their ship, why would they stop? In the galaxy, favors always came with a price. No one helped strangers for free. Closed her eyes and prepared to die. Then she heard something, a sound through the walls of the ship, the sound of another vessel coming close. At first, she thought the pirates had returned to finish what they started, but the ship that appeared through the viewport was not a pirate vessel. It was a human cargo freighter, old and worn but still flying. The name painted on its side read Wandering Star. Had heard of humans. They were a young species, only recently arrived on the galactic scene. They had a reputation for being unpredictable, emotional, and sometimes violent. The Galactic Council had not yet decided what to make of them. A voice came through the emergency channel, speaking in the common galactic language. "This is Captain Danny of the Wandering Star. We detected your thermal signature. Are you in need of assistance?" Could barely speak. Her voice was weak from the cold. "Yes, please, we have children on board. Our life support is failing." There was a pause on the other end. Expected the human to ask about payment. She expected negotiations, demands, conditions. That was how things worked in the galaxy. Nothing was free. Instead, the human simply said, "Hold tight, we're coming." The Wandering Star moved alongside the vessel, watched through the viewport as humans in space suits crossed the gap between the ships. They moved quickly but carefully, carrying containers and equipment. The first human to enter her ship was a young woman with short brown hair. Her name tag read Marsh. She smiled at and her children, a gesture that seemed strange but somehow comforting. "Don't worry," said, "we're going to help you." More humans followed. They brought fuel cells and connected them to the ship systems. They brought oxygen canisters and blankets and food. They worked fast, talking to each other in their own language, sometimes laughing despite the serious situation. One human in particular caught attention. He was older than the others, with gray in his hair and kind eyes. His name tag read Pete Dawson. He was the ship's engineer, and he spent 6 hours in the freezing vacuum outside the ship, repairing the life support system with his own hands. When he finally came back inside, his fingers were blue from the cold, but he was smiling. "Should be working now," he said. "Give it an hour to warm up in here." Could not understand these creatures. They were risking their own safety, spending their own supplies, losing time on their journey. And for what? She was a stranger to them. She had nothing to offer in return. When the repairs were done, Captain Danny came aboard to check on them. He was a middle-aged man with a calm face and steady hands. He looked at and her children, now warm and safe, and he nodded with satisfaction. "Your engines should get you to the nearest station," he said. "It's about 2 days from here. I've programmed the coordinates into your navigation system." Stood up, her legs still shaky. She reached into her robes and pulled out a data chip. It contained access codes to trade accounts, worth a fortune in any market. "Please," she said, holding out the chip, "take this. It is the least I can offer for saving our lives." Danny looked at the chip for a moment. Then he gently pushed her hand back. "You needed help," he said. "That's reason enough." Did not understand. "But the cost, your supplies, your time, you must want something in return." Danny shook his head. "Where I come from, we have a saying, what goes around comes around. You do good things and good things come back to you, maybe not right away, maybe not from the same person, but they come back." He smiled at her children, who were watching him with wide, curious eyes. "Besides," he added, "I have kids of my own. I'd want someone to help them if they were in trouble." The humans returned to their ship, watched through the viewport as the wandering star pulled away and continued on its journey. They did not look back. They did not ask for recognition or praise. They simply helped and then left. Sat down slowly, her mind struggling to process what had just happened. In her 1,000 years of life, in all her travels across the galaxy, she had never experienced anything like this. Every species she knew operated on the principle of exchange. You gave something to get something. That was the foundation of galactic civilization. But these humans had given everything and asked for nothing. She looked at her children, who had fallen asleep in the warmth of the restored life support. They were alive because of the kindness of strangers, strangers who expected no reward. Made a decision in that moment. She would remember this. She would record every detail of what had happened. She would study these humans and learn why they behaved this way. And when the time was right, she would repay this debt in a way that no human could ever imagine. The wandering star disappeared into the stars, its crew unaware that they had just changed the course of galactic history. 15 years passed like water flowing down a river. Danny had grown older. His hair was completely gray now, and his face had more lines than before. He had retired from cargo running after his wife said she was tired of waiting for him to come home. They had moved to a quiet colony world called New Montana, where the sky was always blue and the grass grew tall. They had 2 children now, a boy named Chris and a girl named. Danny spent his days teaching them how to fish in the clear streams and how to fix broken machines with their hands. At night, he told them stories about his adventures in space. One of his favorite stories was about the time he rescued an ambassador and her children from certain death. Over the years, the story had grown a little bit. Sometimes he added details that may not have been exactly true, but the heart of the story was always the same. He had helped someone because they needed help. That was all. Would roll her eyes when he told this story. "You make it sound like you saved the entire galaxy," she would say. Danny would laugh and shrug. "Maybe I did, who knows?" He never really believed that, of course. It was just a nice story. A reminder that doing good things mattered, even when no one was watching. Then one day, everything changed. It started with a news report on the colony's information network. A diplomatic vessel had entered Earth's solar system. This was unusual. The rarely visited human space. They were important members of the Galactic Council, and they usually stayed close to the center of galactic politics. But what made this visit truly strange was the message that came with it. The ambassador had made a specific request. She wanted to meet with one person in particular. Danny. At first, Danny thought it was a joke. Some of his old crew members liked to play pranks on him. But then a real message arrived from the United Terran government, asking him to travel to Luna for a meeting of extreme importance. Looked at him with wide eyes. "What did you do?" she asked. "I have no idea," Danny said honestly. 3 days later, Danny found himself sitting in a conference room in the Terran embassy on Luna. He was wearing formal clothes that he had borrowed because he did not own any. The collar was too tight and the shoes pinched his feet. Beside him sat Admiral Grace, the head of Terran Defense. She was a tall woman with sharp eyes and a serious face. On his other side was Secretary, who was in charge of relations with alien species. He looked nervous, which made Danny nervous too. "Do you know why they want to see you?" Admiral asked. Danny shook his head. "I rescued some 15 years ago. That's the only time I ever met any of them." The Admiral and the Secretary exchanged looks. Neither of them said anything, but Danny could tell they were worried. When powerful aliens asked to meet a retired cargo captain, it usually meant trouble. The door opened. An ambassador entered the room. Danny recognized her immediately, even after all these years. Her skin still glowed with that soft blue light, though now it had hints of gold and silver mixed in. She moved with grace and confidence, followed by 6 other aliens from different species. They were all important members of the Galactic Council. Stopped in front of Danny. For a long moment she simply looked at him, her glowing eyes studying his face. "You look older," she said. Danny managed a small smile. "So do you, but in a good way." Skin flickered with warm golden light. Danny did not know what this meant, but it seemed positive. 15 years ago, began, her voice filling the room, you saved my life and the lives of my children. Your crew spent their own supplies to help us. Your engineer risked his health in the cold of space to repair our ship, and when I offered you payment, you refused. Danny shifted in his seat. It was just the right thing to do, Ambassador. Yes, said. That is exactly what you told me at the time, and those words have haunted me ever since. She turned to face the others in the room. After you rescued us, I became curious about humanity. I studied your history. I read your literature. I watched recordings of your news and your entertainment. I spoke with every human I could find. I wanted to understand why you behaved the way you did. Admiral leaned forward. And what did you find? His glow shifted to bright white, a color that seemed to fill the whole room. I found that Danny was not unique. Your entire species behaves this way. Your history is full of moments when humans help strangers without expecting anything in return. You run into burning buildings to save people you have never met. Your soldiers carry wounded enemies to safety. Your nations send aid to distant lands after disasters, asking for nothing. She paused, letting her words settle. In the 1,000 years my people have traveled among the stars, we have never encountered another species like this. Every civilization we have met operates on exchange. Favors are debts to be collected. Kindness is a transaction, but humans are different. Humans help simply because help is needed. Secretary spoke carefully. That is very kind of you to say, Ambassador, but I don't understand why this matters to the Galactic Council. Turned to face him directly. It matters because the Council has been searching for something for 10,000 years. We have been looking for a species capable of leading us into the future. A species that thinks not only of itself, but of others. A species that understands that true strength is not about power, but about compassion. She looked at Danny, then at the Admiral, then at the Secretary. The Galactic Council has voted. We want humanity to lead us. The room went completely silent. Danny felt like the floor had disappeared beneath his feet. He looked at Admiral, whose face had gone pale. Secretary's mouth was hanging open. Lead you, Danny finally managed to say. Lead the entire galaxy. Nodded. That is correct. We are offering humanity a position of leadership that has never been given to any species before. We are asking you to help guide the future of 400 civilizations across 1,000,000 worlds. Danny stared at her, his mind completely blank. He had come to this meeting expecting trouble, maybe even punishment for some long-forgotten mistake. He had never expected this. Outside the window, the Earth hung in the darkness of space, blue and green and beautiful. 6 billion humans lived there, going about their daily lives, completely unaware that the galaxy had just changed forever. All because one cargo captain had stopped to help some strangers in trouble. The news spread across human space like fire in dry grass. Every news channel, every information network, every social media platform was talking about the same thing. The Galactic Council wanted humanity to lead them. It was the biggest story in human history. People did not know whether to celebrate or panic. Some humans were excited. They saw this as proof that humanity was special, that all the struggles and hardships of human history had been worth something. They talked about a new golden age, a future where humans would guide the galaxy toward peace and prosperity. Other humans were terrified. They saw this as a trap, a trick by alien species who wanted to use humanity for their own purposes. They pointed out that humans had only been traveling in space for 200 years. How could they possibly lead civilizations that had existed for thousands of years? And some humans were simply confused. They did not understand why anyone would want them to be in charge of anything. Commander Marsh was one of the confused ones. She stood on the observation deck of the Terran cruiser Endurance, watching the stars streak past as the ship traveled faster than light. She was 43 years old now, with gray starting to appear in her brown hair. She had spent her whole career in the Terran fleet, rising through the ranks from a young navigator to a respected commander. She still remembered that night in the belt, when she had spotted the thermal signature of a dying ship. She remembered crossing through space to help She remembered the look on Ambassador's face when Captain Danny refused payment. She had thought about that night many times over the years, but she had never imagined it would lead to this. The Endurance was carrying a diplomatic envoy to the Galactic Council's capital world, was in charge of security for the mission. It was the most important assignment of her life, and she felt completely unprepared for it. Footsteps approached behind her. She turned to see Danny walking toward her, moving slowly because of his age but still standing straight. The Hat insisted that Danny be part of the delegation. He was the symbol of everything they admired about humanity, a simple man who had done a simple good deed. He had not asked for fame or reward. He had just helped because helping was the right thing to do. "You look worried," Danny said, stopping beside her. Sighed, "I keep thinking about what happens if we fail. What happens if we get to the council and they realize they made a mistake? What if humanity isn't as good as they think we are?" Danny was quiet for a moment, looking out at the stars. "Do you know why I stopped that night?" he finally asked. "When we found the ship." Shook her head. "I always assumed it was just your nature. You're a good person." Danny laughed softly. "Maybe, but the truth is I almost didn't stop. We were already behind schedule. I knew stopping would cost us money. I knew it might be dangerous. Part of me wanted to just keep going and pretend I hadn't seen anything." Looked at him with surprise. She had never heard him talk about this before. "So what changed your mind?" she asked. Danny turned to face her. His eyes were old and tired, but there was something bright in them too. "I thought about my kids. I thought about what I would want someone to do if my children were on that ship, dying in the cold. And I realized that I couldn't live with myself if I just flew away, even if no one ever knew, even if it didn't matter to anyone else. It would matter to me." He looked back at the stars. "That's the thing about being good. It's not about being perfect. It's not about never having selfish thoughts or never wanting to take the easy path. It's about choosing to do the right thing anyway, even when it's hard, even when no one is watching." Thought about this for a long time. The stars continued to flow past, billions of lights in the endless darkness. "But what about the whole galaxy?" she asked. "How can we possibly lead all those civilizations? We don't know anything about most of them. We don't understand their cultures or their politics. We're just humans." Danny smiled. Maybe that's the point. Maybe they don't want us to lead because we're wise or powerful. Maybe they want us to lead because we're willing to admit that we don't have all the answers, because we're willing to help without expecting something in return. He put a hand on her shoulder. "When I was young, my grandmother used to tell me something. She said that leadership isn't about being in charge. It's about taking care of people. It's about putting others first. Maybe that's what the galaxy needs right now. Not another powerful empire trying to control everything. Just people who care about doing the right thing." Looked at this old man who had accidentally changed history by following his conscience. He did not look like a hero. He looked like someone's grandfather, but maybe that was exactly what made him special. "I was on your ship that night," she said. "I was the one who spotted their thermal signature." Danny's eyes widened slightly. "I remember you. You were so young, fresh out of the academy." "I've been thinking about that night ever since this all started," admitted. "What if I had missed the signal? What if you had decided it wasn't worth the risk? Everything would be different." Danny nodded slowly. "That's true, but you didn't miss it, and I didn't ignore it. We made a choice, a small choice in a vast universe, and somehow that choice mattered." He looked out at the stars one more time. "That's the lesson, I think. Every choice matters. Every act of kindness matters. You never know which small thing you do today will change the future tomorrow. So you just keep doing good things one at a time and trust that it all adds up to something." The Endurance continued its journey, carrying its cargo of uncertain humans toward a destiny they could barely imagine. Somewhere ahead, 400 civilizations were waiting to see if humanity was worthy of their trust. Marsh did not know if they were ready. She did not know if they would succeed. But she knew one thing for certain. They had to try. Because that was what humans did. They tried, they hoped, they helped. And sometimes, against all odds, that was enough. The council chamber was the largest structure any human had ever seen. It was a perfect sphere, 3 kilometers wide, floating in space near the center of the galaxy. Its inner surface was covered with seats for representatives of every known species. Millions of beings could fit inside, and on this day it seemed like millions had come. The human delegation stood on a platform of pure light in the center of the sphere. Secretary was there, along with Admiral Grace. Commander Marsh stood with the security team, her hand resting on her weapon even though she knew it would be useless if anything went wrong. And Danny was there too, standing slightly apart from the others. He felt very small in this enormous space, very old, very human. The chamber buzzed with the sounds of 1,000 languages. Translator devices struggled to keep up with the noise. Beings of every shape and size looked down at the small group of humans, studying them with eyes and sensors and other organs that humans could not even recognize. Secretary stepped forward to the speaking position. A beam of light surrounded him, and suddenly his voice could be heard throughout the entire chamber. "Members of the Galactic Council," he began, "on behalf of the United Terran government, I thank you for this opportunity to address you." He spoke for a long time. He talked about human history, about the wars and the struggles and the long journey from caves to stars. He did not try to hide the bad parts. He spoke about the times when humans had killed each other, when they had destroyed their own planet, when they had treated each other with cruelty and hatred. "We are not a perfect species," he said. "We have made terrible mistakes. We have caused great harm both to ourselves and to others." The chamber was silent. Every being was listening. "But we have also learned from those mistakes. We have grown. We have built civilizations that value justice and kindness. We have created art and music that celebrates the best of what we can be. And most importantly, we have never stopped trying to be better." He paused, looking around at the millions of faces watching him. "I do not know if we are worthy of the honor you have offered us. I do not know if any species could be worthy of such a thing. But I do know this: if you give us the chance, we will do our best. We will try to be fair. We will try to be just. We will try to help those who need help without asking for anything in return." He stepped back from the speaking position. The chamber remained silent for a long moment. Then, from somewhere high above, a figure began to move. Marsh watched as a massive being descended toward the central platform. It was made entirely of crystal, catching the light and scattering it into rainbows. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. The Admiral whispered beside her, "One of the founding species of the Council. They haven't spoken in open session for 3,000 years." The crystal being stopped on the platform, towering over the humans. Its voice resonated through the chamber, deep and ancient. "We have watched humanity for 200 years. We have seen your ship spread across the stars. We have seen your weapons grow more powerful. We have seen your people fight and struggle and expand." The humans stood very still, waiting for the judgment. "We have also seen other things," the continued. "We have watched your emergency responders run toward danger while everyone else runs away. We have seen your soldiers carry wounded enemies to safety. We have seen your doctors travel across the galaxy to help species they had never met before." The crystal being turned to face Danny directly. "We have seen a cargo captain stop his ship to save strangers, asking nothing in return. And we have seen that this was not unusual. This was not special. This was simply what humans do." Danny felt very exposed under that alien gaze. He wanted to say something, but his throat was too dry. They turned back to address the full council. 10,000 years ago, my people made a great mistake. We believed that strength meant never needing anyone else. We trusted no one. We relied only on ourselves. And in our isolation, we nearly destroyed everything we had built." Rainbows danced across the chamber as they moved. "We learned too late that true strength is not about power. It is not about weapons or technology or control. True strength is about connection. It is about caring for others. It is about being willing to help without counting the cost." The crystal being raised one massive limb, in a gesture that everyone in the chamber understood. "Humanity is young. Humanity is flawed. But humanity has something that we lost long ago: the ability to show kindness to strangers, the willingness to help without expecting reward. This is not weakness. This is the rarest and most precious form of strength." This voice rose until it filled every corner of the vast chamber. "I cast my vote in favor of human leadership, and I call upon my fellow council members to do the same." For a moment, nothing happened. Then slowly, lights began to appear throughout the chamber. Each light represented a vote: green for yes, red for no. The lights spread like stars being born, growing brighter and more numerous with each passing second. Marsh held her breath, watching the lights multiply. When the voting was finished, the result was displayed in the center of the chamber. 312 species had voted in favor. 84 had voted against. 4 had abstained. Humanity had been chosen. The chamber erupted in sound. Some beings were cheering. Others were shouting in anger or confusion. The noise was overwhelming, a wall of alien voices that crashed over the human delegation. Danny stood very still in the middle of it all. He looked up at the millions of beings who had just decided to trust his species with the future of the galaxy. He thought about his grandmother, who had taught him to always help others. He thought about his crew on the wandering star, who had followed him into the cold darkness without hesitation. He thought about the small choices that had led to this moment: a thermal signature detected, a decision to stop, a hand pushing away payment. Somehow, against all logic and probability, it had been enough. Admiral put a hand on his shoulder. "You look like you're about to fall over," she said. Danny managed a weak smile. "I think I might." "Don't worry," she said. "We'll figure this out. It's what we do." Danny nodded slowly, She was right. Humans figured things out. They struggled and failed and tried again. They helped each other through hard times. They never gave up. Maybe that was why the galaxy had chosen them. Not because they were perfect, but because they kept trying. And now they would have to try harder than ever before. 5 years had passed since the vote. Danny stood on the observation deck of the Galactic Council headquarters, looking out at the endless dance of starships. His body was 83 years old now, and it felt every one of those years. His joints ached. His eyes were not as sharp as they used to be, but his mind was still clear and his heart was still full. Ships from 100 different worlds moved through the space around the station. Some were sleek and elegant. Others were massive and powerful. A few were so strange that Danny could not even guess what species had built them. But they all flew together, sharing the same space, following the same rules. That was new. Before humanity took leadership, the different species had kept to themselves. They had traded and negotiated, but they had never truly worked together. Now, things were different. The first human council chair had been a woman named Vega. She had been a teacher before she entered politics, and she had brought that teacher's patience to her new role. When disputes arose between species, she did not threaten or demand. She listened. She asked questions. She helped each side understand the other's point of view. It had been slow work, but it had worked. Conflicts that had lasted for centuries began to resolve. Species that had been enemies for generations started talking to each other, not because they had to, but because they wanted to. The second council chair had been Samuel Park, an engineer who had spent his career building things. He had created something called the Galactic Aid Corps, an organization dedicated to helping any species in need. Whenever a disaster struck, whenever a planet was threatened, the Aid Corps would arrive with supplies and workers and hope. They never asked for payment. They never demanded favors in return. They just helped. At first, the other species had been suspicious. They could not believe that anyone would help without wanting something. But as the years passed and the help kept coming, they began to understand. This was simply how humans did things. And slowly, some of them began to do the same. Ambassador stood beside Danny on the observation deck. Her glow was softer now, the colors shifting through shades that Danny had learned to read over the years. Right now, she was peaceful, content. "Do you ever think about that night?" she asked. "The night we met." Danny smiled. "Every day. My wife says I think about it too much. She says I should focus on the present instead of living in the past." Is Wise said, "How are the children?" "Good. Chris is working on a colony world near the rim. He's an engineer like Pete was, became a doctor. She's working with the Aid Corps now, helping species I've never even heard of." His glow warmed to a soft gold. The legacy continues. Danny nodded slowly. He thought about Pete Dawson, the engineer who had spent 6 hours in the freezing vacuum to save ship. Pete had died 3 years ago, peacefully in his sleep. His family had received messages of condolence from a dozen different species. He thought about Marsh, who had spotted that thermal signature so long ago. She was an admiral now, leading a fleet that protected trade routes and escorted aid ships. She still talked about that night sometimes, wondering what would have happened if she had looked the other way. "I've been thinking about something," Danny said, "about why this all worked, why humanity was able to do what other species couldn't." Turned to look at him, her glowing eyes curious. "I think it's because we're used to being small," Danny continued. "For most of our history, we were just tiny creatures on a single planet, surrounded by a universe that didn't care about us. We had no power. We had no protection. The only thing we had was each other." He looked out at the ships, at the station, at the galaxy spread out before him. "So we learned to help each other. Not because it made sense, not because we expected something back, but because that was the only way to survive. When you're small and weak, the only advantage you have is cooperation. The only strength you have is kindness." was silent for a long moment. "My people have a saying," she finally said. "The universe remembers every light, no matter how small. For 10,000 years, we have searched for a species that understood this truth. We found many who were powerful, many who were wise, many who were ancient beyond measure." She turned to face him fully, her glow brightening. "But you were the first who were kind." Danny felt tears forming in his old eyes. He had never been good at accepting praise. Even now, after everything that had happened, he still felt like just a cargo captain who had gotten lucky. "I didn't do anything special," he said. "I just helped some people who needed it." Reached out and touched his hand. Her skin was warm and soft, pulsing gently with light. "And that is why you are special, because you do not think it is special, because to you it is simply what people do." Far below them, in the great plaza of the station, a human cargo ship was docking. Its crew was unloading supplies for a distant colony that had been struck by a natural disaster. They would ask for nothing in return. They would help because help was needed. Somewhere else in the galaxy, a team of human doctors was treating patients of a species they had never met before. They did not speak the same language. They did not understand each other's customs. But they understood suffering, and they understood how to ease it. And somewhere in the deep darkness between stars, another species was watching. They had seen the humans arrive. They had seen them help without asking for reward. And they were beginning to wonder if maybe, just maybe, there was another way to live. The ripples were spreading. Danny had started something with one small act of kindness. Now that something was changing the entire galaxy, not through force or fear, but through the simple power of people helping people. "I should get back to my quarters," Danny said. "Will be worried if I stay out too long." Nodded, "Of course. But Danny, before you go, I want you to know something." He stopped, looking at her. "The reward for what you did that night was never about power or recognition. It was never about leading the galaxy or changing history. The real reward was this." She gestured at the window, at the ships and the stars and the vast civilization that stretched out in every direction. "The real reward is seeing what happens when kindness spreads. When one good deed inspires another, and another, and another, until the whole universe is a little bit brighter." Danny looked out at the galaxy he had helped to change. He thought about all the people who had helped him along the way. His crew, his family, the strangers who had become friends, the enemies who had become allies. He thought about his grandmother, who had taught him that helping others was its own reward. She had been right. "Thank you," he said softly, "for remembering." Smiled, her glow warm and bright. "Humans taught us to remember. Now we will never forget." Danny walked slowly back to his quarters, his old bones aching but his spirit light. Outside the windows, the galaxy continued to turn, filled with countless species learning slowly but surely that kindness was not weakness. It was the greatest strength of all.